everyone. This is Rick Mercier. We're here for another episode of the Garner Station podcast, which we which is available wherever you get your podcasts. Also available on YouTube as a video. If you go to the Town of Garner's channel on YouTube, so that's youtube.com/Town of Garner. And today, I am very happy to have with me Mr. Tim Stevens, who's done so much for Garner over the years, and now is helping to bring something very special to town in really just a couple of weeks. So, Tim, let's just get started. Tell us about the Wall That Heals.
Well, the Wall That Heals is a 3/4 replica of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. There's several of these walls that travel around the country, but the Wall That Heals is associated and administrated by the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington. So it's kind of like the official wall that travels. It's a 3/4 size, so it's 375 feet long. It would not fit on a football field. And at the highest point, it's 7.5 feet tall. And it's getting here on March 31st open. We're leaving at 2 o'clock on April 2nd. And it's made out of granite. And so all the 58,281 names that are on the wall are engraved. So this wall you can go and take etchings off of.
So it sounds very similar to the the original.
It's identical to the original, except just a little bit smaller.
Wow. And this will come. I mean, how do you bring something? How do you deliver something like that?
It's kind of amazing. They have a custom-made truck, and they basically store the wall itself in the middle section, down the middle, and then both sides are pulled in, and they have displays built into the side, so they open the outside of the walls. And that leaves you with all these displays, and it turns it into a museum. The truck that brings the wall also turns into a museum. They call it the Mobile Education Center. And so it has all these displays in there, which is one of the advantages of having this wall. In some ways, visiting the Wall That Heals is better than visiting the wall in Washington. We have a museum. They don't have a museum yet in Washington. And one of the biggest things is that anybody who wants a tour can get a tour. I'd seen the wall in Washington several times, but had never really seen it until I had a tour and had someone explain to me what it was I was seeing.
And will these tours be available round the clock? Are there certain hours when they're...
Well, we're trying to get people to put together groups of 10 or more, and then all they have to do is call and let us know, and we'll schedule them a tour essentially anytime they want to take a tour. The Wall That Heals has 3 purposes. The first is to honor those 58,000 men and women who were killed, and the second one is to respect the people, men and women who went to Vietnam and came back and survived. And the third part is to educate everyone. The youngest Vietnam veteran living today is 65 years old. So you can see that in a few years, there won't be any survivors. There won't be anybody to tell these stories unless the stories are told now.
So we're going to talk about a lot, but why don't we just give people a place to go online where they can kind of find out all this information and maybe sign up to get a tour and do other things too.
Okay. If you go to garnerwall.com, you can get information about when it's going to be here, the escort that's bringing it in. You can sign up to be a volunteer and work at the wall. You can sign up for a tour. And while you're there, you can check out our community in Vietnam. And we've interviewed about 100 area Vietnam veterans and written a story and have a picture on each one of them. And we've got stories there on everybody from Wake County who was killed, everybody from Johnston County who was killed, and everybody from Harnett County who was killed.
And there's a big slate of events. Do you want to take a minute or two and kind of give us that overview of the events that are
Sure. The first thing we have is on March 29th, which is National Vietnam Veterans Memorial Day. And so we have Bringing the Wall to Garner. It's going to start in Clayton, and we'll go downtown Clayton and then come down Highway 70. It starts at noon, and then it goes down 70 to Timber Drive, takes a left, goes down Timber to Avesboro Road, takes a right, and goes on to the park. It consists of the Garner and Clayton Police Departments, the truck that brings the wall, and we think we have somewhere between 200 and 300 motorcyclists who will be riding with the wall, and the escort should arrive at the park around 12:45 or 1 o'clock, and the mayor will be there to proclaim Vietnam Veterans Week in Garner at the wall. We'll have a brief ceremony and take pictures of all the riders. The wall opens on March 31st, a Thursday. Come as early as you want. We'll be ready probably late Wednesday afternoon, but come whenever you want to on Thursday. Then on Friday, we've got a very special event. We're having a candlelight service at the wall. This is when we're going to recognize and focus on the names that are on the wall. Garner had 8 men to be killed in Vietnam, so we're going to be putting wreaths up for each of them. And then also we're putting up a wreath in memory, which will be people who survived Vietnam and have died. And many of these people had illnesses or complications from their time in Vietnam. The one that we always first think of in Garner is Ronnie Williams. He told me he couldn't explain it, but doctor told him that he was dying of Parkinson's because of being exposed to Agent Orange when he was 19 years old. Makes no sense. So we'll be doing that. We have a chaplain who was in Vietnam will be our speaker. The whole ceremony will probably last about 45 minutes. It's not going to be long. And we're starting, the sun sets at 7:38. So we'll start at 7:30. It should be getting dark about the time. We have 100 Boy Scouts involved, and everyone who goes will be given a candle and an opportunity to walk past the wall and have some special music, and we just think it's going to be a reverent, meaningful time for us to pause and think of those men who were killed. Then on Saturday, we're having a welcome home, walk to the wall. Many of our Vietnam veterans were not treated well when they came home. I always thought it was an exaggeration when I heard that Vietnam veterans were spit on. But I've interviewed 100 local men, and several of them said they were literally spat on in airports. There's one gentleman here who wore his uniform home, was trying to surprise his family, got back early, and could not get a taxi to pick him up. They would not transport him while he was in uniform. So that's the kind of reception they had. Another problem was that many of these men, women, parents had served in World War II, and their parents were heroes. Yeah. And they went and they served and did everything they were asked to do, and they came back and they were reviled. And they just wondered, what did I do wrong? And then many of them came to the conclusion that just America's changed and we don't value the military anymore. And then we had the Middle East conflicts, and those men came home and they were heroes. And that guys from Vietnam saying, we must have done something really wrong. And so what we're trying to do, we're 50 years late, but we're going to have a welcome home, walk to the wall. We're going to have dozens of Vietnam veterans. They're going to start at the Lutheran Church. We're going to transport most of them. Some will ride, and some will be able to walk. And we got a Marine band coming from New River, and they're going to lead these veterans from the Lutheran Church to the wall. I want you to picture if there's 50 people along the parade route and they politely clap, and that's one thing. That's kind of sad. But if we have 1,000 people, 2,000 people lining the streets down to the wall, how do you think those men are going to feel? I'll give you an example. I had a lady call me last week. Her husband wants to participate in this. And she was concerned. She said, can you find someone who would be willing to push his wheelchair? And we said, that's no problem. She says, he's in hospice. He's called all his relatives all over the country and has asked them to come. He sent out emails to his friends and all the neighbors and asked them to come. He wants them to wave goodbye. At this moment, he wants to share with his neighbors. And so you hear a story like that and you kind of get the idea that this is a good thing to finally tell people thank you.
What time is that again? When
That's 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock on Saturday. So, get there a little bit early. Bring a lawn chair. The parade's only going to it's not really a parade. It's a walk. Mm-hmm. We don't have much. All we got is the veterans. We've started to have lots of other stuff. All we want is to tell them if you come, you're coming to thank the veterans. And so 2 o'clock, come a little bit early, bring a lawn chair. If you don't have a flag, we'll give you a flag. If you want to make a sign, make a sign. But the thing that kind of haunts me in the back of my mind, I was reading a book, and several years ago, a town in, I think it was Indiana or Ohio, it was in the Midwest, advertised a big parade for Vietnam veterans. It was in the 80s, and they had people travel for 200 miles to come participate. And they had lots of veterans, and they walked through empty streets. There was no one there. They got close to the end, and they heard the cheering, and they began to get excited. They put a little more spring in their step. Well, everybody was down here waiting for us, and there was lots of cheering. But the people cheering were the veterans who had already finished the walk and walked back to cheer for the other veterans. That's pretty sad. But on the other side, it's just amazing to think if we have a huge turnout thanking these guys.
Yeah. So you've obviously done a lot of research about the Vietnam War era and Garner, and Garner was, of course, much smaller, more of a rural community back then, but the impact of the war on this community was still profound. Do you want to talk about that? Because I think folks don't know about it.
Well, there were 8 people. Probably the most famous, the one that's probably the best known was Harold Teal. He was president of the Bible Club here, and he seemed an unlikely candidate to join the Marines. But he said, men are dying in Vietnam. Some of them never heard anything about Jesus. As they're dying, they all need somebody to pray for them. And so that's why he went to Vietnam. And then he sacrificed his life, literally, saving the lives of everyone else in his platoon. He saved them all and sacrificed his life. He received a Silver Star. 3 of the 8 from Garner received the Silver Star. They died in heroic ways. And Vietnam is still all around us. If you saw the evacuation from Afghanistan, you think Vietnam. If you think about distrust of the government, you think Vietnam. And just Vietnam is all around us still. And that's not counting the guys who still suffer from post-stress, who one of the gentlemen from Garner interviewed said he hasn't slept the full night since he got back from Vietnam. And the effects are still around us, even if we don't recognize them.
So you made a play a few years ago about
that's kind of what the
men who
I wrote a play, Duty, and it was about the 8 men from Garner, and that got me kind of interested even more than I was already. And then I heard about the wall that heals, and I'm in the 3rd year of what was a 6-month project. The first year we were supposed to have it, we postponed about 4 weeks before it started because of COVID. And then last year we were going to have it, and we had to postpone for COVID again. And so, we're getting really, really close this year. We're not cocky. We're not saying, but we hope it happens. we think it's going to be, it could be one of the biggest, most impactful events ever in our town. But a lot depends on if people want to support it. If they support it, it's going to be an incredible, just thanking those guys that deserve to have been. And I know we're 50 years late, and I know it's too little, but now's the only time we can do it that's left.
Yeah, yeah. How's it been received in other communities that have had it? Because it goes to about, what, 20 or so communities
Right.
each year?
They travel somewhere between 30 and 35. This year they cut it back a little bit. They're doing 25 communities. Usually there's about 130 communities every year that put in bids to host it, and so we were one of those. And like when it was in the average, we'll have, I think it's about 6,000 visitors during the week. Wake Forest had it a few years ago, and they had 25,000. Tarboro had it 4 years ago, and they had 25,000. And so we're thinking that we may be on the high end rather than on the low end.
Yeah, yeah. I would imagine, especially, I know you've been doing some outreach, and there's probably a lot of folks from Johnston who will be coming to check it out and Harnett, and there's a
Raleigh's right here,
Yeah.
and people from Durham, and just it's in the thing. One of the nicest things about it is that with this wall, the wall that heals, it is essentially impossible to spend any money at the wall. We have no souvenirs. We have no concessions. There is nobody asking for donations. There is no one handing out literature. It is coming to the wall. It's a kind of a sacred place. In fact, the wall is in the shape of a V, and if you go from point to point, any place in there is considered sacred ground. You don't take shortcuts through there. You don't do, that is, if you step into there, it's like going through a cemetery and honoring those names. Because as you get close, it hits you. From a distance, you look and you see this big wall. And then you get close, 58,000 names. Just 58,000 names. But then you say 58,000 people, young men, 8 women. One of the 8 women who are listed on the wall was from Eflin, North Carolina, Annie Ruth Graham. And so that kind of makes that come home. And you think about each of those names represents a life, and each of them represents a tragedy. And then you kind of, the size of what it is amazing. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial was the first monument of its type. There's nothing militaristic about it. It was the first monument to ever list every person from a country who were killed in a war. And it was very controversial when it was built. And the thing that they were achieved with it was it's a place of healing for everybody. If you protested the war, you go there and says, this is what I was protesting. 58,000 men killed. And if you went, this is like honoring those who died. And so they were able to achieve a monument that's a place that anybody can go and cry at.
So I guess we haven't said it explicitly, but so where is it going to be in Garner, and kind of describe the layout and its relation to another very important memorial that's there.
It's going to be at Lake Benson Park, and it's one of the best places to have it that the wall people have seen. If you can picture, the Garner Veterans Memorial is up at the extreme west side, kind of on top of the hill. The wall will start sort of at the catty corner of the memorial and extend essentially the entire way of that top level. And so that just gives you an idea how long it is. And they like it a great deal because it's a dark place. This is illuminated. The wall is illuminated, so you can visit at night and be able to read the names, and it's striking at night. And so it's a dark place, but there's lots and lots of room, for visitors to come and see it. And when plenty of free parking, that's the other thing, just we can park I think over 1,000 cars. The park is used to handling large crowds. Uh, and we're able to put it back a little bit so that when you walk up to it, you kind of see it in its entirety. And while you're there, you can also visit the Garner Veterans Memorial. You can find someone and they probably give you a little tour at the memorial, or you can go on your telephone and they have a pre-recorded tour of the Garner Veterans Memorial. Mm-hmm. And so it's just an ideal place for it. The backdrop is pretty, the trees are pretty, it's a grassy place. Like the park is
kind of our central park.
Yes, it's our central. That's the word I was trying to think. Central Park, and just that's a gathering place. This is where our community gathers, and so we can gather there again and pay tribute to these people.
Yeah, it's hard to think of a community having a better place to host that.
Really. Well, years and years ago, there was a bond issue that failed that was going to build a civic center there. And this was the best failed bond issue of all time. Instead of becoming a regular kind of park kind of place, we got this huge expanse of grass and sunshine and walking trails. And I live nearby, and anytime you go up there, there's somebody there. And it is this great gathering place. This is like a place that, everybody goes. It doesn't matter. Everybody's there. And I just love the park.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, like you say, on any nice day, it's full with all sorts of folks doing all sorts of different things.
And there's room.
It butts up to the lake, of course, thus its name. And we have our biggest event there July 3rd. We have our Memorial Day observance there right by the memorial. And I guess, so you mentioned the parking, so there will be kind of similar to the other big events there. There's going to be some parking on the grass available on that day, not just along the dirt.
We have a lot of reserved parking for Vietnam veterans. We have increased our handicap parking places as well. And then we will be parking, the first parking places will be over by the Red Barn. That has another name. They use another name, but where the Red Barn is, that park over there, that's the first thing. And then if that fills, then we overflow onto the other side of the street.
Very good. So, coming back to a lot of the research you've done and talking with veterans in the region, I try at least three different counties, 3 or 4 different counties you've talked to folks. Kind of, are there, some common themes that you're hearing from them about what this will mean to have the wall come here?
Well, the thing about it is just many of the Vietnam veterans are just a little leery. I understand that. And then there was one I talked to. Thank you so much for bringing the wall. This is so wonderful that you recognize us, and I will not go. And, he says there's names on the wall because men did what I told them to do. But it goes back to, it's called the wall that heals. And there's something about going and confronting the names that brings healing. The wall is open 24 hours a day. And the reason it's open is there will be people who aren't going to the wall. I'm not going to the wall. 2 a.m., they go to the wall. I know down in Newbern, when the wall was in Newbern, they had 3 or 4 men who came every night. They would come somewhere between 2 and 4 and sit on a bench and wait till sunrise, and then they left. And that's why we're open 24 hours a day. We know there's going to be people who come in the middle of the night. They're not coming for a tour. They're not coming for someone to talk to. They're coming to be there. And then the other part of that is sometimes they come in the middle of the night and they want to talk to another veteran. I had a veteran tell me, talking about Vietnam is like talking about a toothache. I can tell you all about a toothache, but if you've never had a toothache, you don't really understand. Talking about Vietnam is the same way. I can tell you all about Vietnam, but if you were not there, you will never really understand.
What kind of, so it'll be here about 4 days, once it's sort of set up. And what do you think could be the lasting impact for a community, or sort of like what's a follow up, or what could a follow up look like for the community?
Well, I mean, there's other veteran type things you can do. Uh, the big thing is, I think, it's bringing awareness to people who don't know. So hopefully there'll be a greater appreciation for our Vietnam veterans and for military people in general. Uh, I think there's something to be said for bringing a community together on a project. We have that with Relay for Life, but this would be another thing. If everybody in our community is kind of touched and focused on one thing, it brings us together. And so that next time we do a similar type project, we know we can do. I think it was 1987, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill hosted the Olympic Festival. In 1987, the Triangle hosted the Olympic Festival in the three cities, communities. All the communities cooperated in a different way than they ever had before, and that had lasting effects.
Yeah.
We've reached out to every civic club, I think, and asked their assistance in it, and just this sense of cooperation, sense of community. That's to me, is one of the key things. Garner's changing. It's getting bigger. It's not Garner that I grew up in. I went to the Piggly Wiggly. Everybody in there knew me, or at least knew my people. We had a population of 4,000. All right, and we had this great sense of community. To maintain that sense of community, you have to have things that everyone in the community wants to come together for, and this can be one of those things, and we can do similar things in the future.
And one of the lasting things is you worked on a documentary to accompany the visit, and it has maybe aired in a couple places, and will air. It will both be broadcast and actually be part of live events. Can you talk about those?
Right, I made a documentary, and it's on North Carolina's contributions to Vietnam, and we focused on 6 people, and then we talked about the wall that heals and this type of thing. It made its premiere at the North Carolina Museum of History. It's going to be shown on March 20th at Avonsboro Road Baptist Church at 3 o'clock. We've got the 82nd Airborne coming as special guests. They will do a concert too. We're going to show it on March 27th at the Airborne and Special Operations Museum in Fayetteville. Fox 50 is going to televise it on March 26th at 1 o'clock. And then WRAL is going to air it on March 27th, a Sunday, at 1. And then we think it's going to move over to PBS and be televised over there around Memorial Day. But it focuses on 6 people, one of which is Harold Teal from Garner. Then we talk about the youngest American killed in the war was from Goldsboro. We focus on another young man whose grandfather, not his great-grandfather, but his grandfather, fought for the Union in the Civil War. He was an escaped slave and got to New Bern. A man from Coates who was killed in Operation Baby Lift at the end of the war when we were trying to rescue orphans in Vietnam and bring them to America for homes. One of the 8 women killed was from Eflin. A family in Charlotte's son was killed, and they refused to acknowledge it. They kept thinking he would come home one day, never found his body, and held his funeral 46 years later. And then one of the most touching stories is a young man from Silva who survived the war, but helicopter crash, was left in the jungle for 79 days to survive as he could, and it ruined his health. He had more than 200 major operations during the rest of his life. And so we talk about these individuals, and through them, it expands, and you can understand the war in a little bit different way.
Wow, so many stories. Thanks for
Sure.
all your work and bringing this here, because like you say, this is going to be a really huge event for the community, and maybe one of the biggest events we've ever had in Garner, really. Certainly a special one-off event. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we get ready to
Well,
sign
just
off?
just if you're my friend, I need for you to come on Saturday at 2:00. What, it's important to them to be thanked. It's more important that we thank somebody. We need to pause and just think about what people have done for us. And so it'll be a good time there. And I think the candlelight service is going to be moving, and it'll be special for the families. We have family representatives coming to place the wreaths, and just go and spend time. At the wall, you can spend 20 minutes or so, or 30 minutes just looking at the wall. You can go look at the museum. And then we have our community in Vietnam, where we'll have an exhibit on about 100 people from Garner and the surrounding area who went to Vietnam and their experiences. Some of them are funny, some of them are tragic, and a lot of them are just, I didn't know he went to Vietnam. I had one gentleman I was talking to, interviewed him, called him, I want to talk to you about Vietnam. And he says, no one in Garner has ever been told I went to Vietnam. How'd you find out? I said, well, I just did. He said, I found out very soon when I returned from Vietnam. I thought I'd done something great. But I found out when people found out you went to Vietnam, it didn't make you any friends. That's kind of tragic.
Yeah, thank you so
Yes,
much.
sir.
I mean, this is like you say, long overdue.
Yeah.
And
Third year of 6 months project.
it'll, yeah, and I think it's gonna mean so much. And let's remind folks again, kind of where they can go to get just learn the whole slate of events and how to sign up to be a volunteer and everything else. You can find that information at
GarnerWall.com. I don't know how I can make it any simpler. Garner Wall.
GarnerWall.com. You'll learn everything you need to know, and please come out for the for the welcome home procession parade.
Right,
We're not
right.
calling it a parade, I guess. That in particular will be especially meaningful. But come and check out the wall and the mobile educational center with it. It's a special added benefit of seeing this wall that you don't get when you go to DC.
Right. And you don't have to pay for parking, and you don't have to put up the hassle of Washington, D.C. traffic.
That as well. So thank you for everything you do for the community, Tim. You're such a treasure to Garner, and beloved, and we appreciate it. And thanks for being with us today. And that will wrap up this episode of Garner Station. Again, you can check out this and other episodes at our YouTube channel, the Town of Garner's YouTube channel. The podcast itself is available wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks, and we'll see you next time. Take care.